Let's go ahead and get started. I'm Jason Heikenfeld. I'm the first presenter in this subsection. I was told to mention that the restrooms, for those that caffeinated before they even got here, are down to the right and to the left. Okay, so they are over that way, in case you're wondering where those are. Today I'm going to talk about a 100% flipped classroom. I'm going to try to get through this quickly. In fact, I feel guilty because I give this talk in a non-flip format where I just lecture, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay, I haven't figured out how to give this talk in an interactive format. Maybe that's the next task. And the focus is course Semiconductor Devices, which is a 2000 level course which second, third year students take. So let me first tell you how I used to teach. And this is what I used to think of my perfected lectures in quotes. And I used a technique that I called discovery-based lecturing to increase active learning in my classroom. And basically, it was a very simple rule. I stretched this as far as I could where I would not give them anything in lecture that they could not figure out themselves. So I wasn't going to feed them information. I would give them just a little bit of stuff and say, okay, well, what do you think this means? Or how would you finish this derivation or something like that? And this is an example you could see here. I mean, this is stuff they saw the previous week, and this is how I start the lecture. Let's ask some questions, right? And it's all question-driven, and they discover themselves how this particular device works, which in this case is a solar cell. And you see the next slide, you know, like what's width, okay? And then we break that out, and so it also helps the class self-pace. So this is where I was, okay? So let me get through this, more questions, and here's where I was. At some point, my course had to be scheduled repeatedly at 8 a.m., okay? Because we know that we have classroom sizes an issue with scheduling and everything like that. And so at that time also, I had been providing all my lectures online as well. So I'd already basically provided online lectures so they could go back if they missed something in class. And still at 8 a.m., I had 2/3 of the class showing up. But they were completely and totally incapable of learning. And it was a disaster. I mean, there's people, you know, head asleep on the desk, and you could see the drool glistening across the desk. And they're trying. You know, they come in, they've been battling 75. They are trying, but they are not capable of learning. And so I had to do something. And so that, for me personally, is why I went to a flipped classroom. Is that I want to basically take on 8 a.m. and never have to worry about this, even if they schedule me at 8. So even if you're a great orator, okay, and this is my starting point on a flipped classroom, after about 15 minutes, we all sort of sound like this. So it's the Charlie Brown video, right? And you see Lucy, this is my students, right? They're dying. And Charlie's like, oh, she's going to get in trouble, right? So I mean, there's nothing you can do, right? I mean, you've done this. You could have fireworks going off in the classroom, and half of them are still going to fall asleep after 15 minutes. And so how can we have less talking, which is passive learning, what I'm doing here, right? And more doing active learning and more like fully alert learning instead, okay? And so that's where the flipped classroom came up for me. So what's an inverted classroom pedagogy? An inverted classroom flips the traditional model by moving lecture content outside and problem solving inside the classroom. And so traditional lecture is where you deliver the content, and homework is where you do the problem solving, and this is just reversed. Okay, where the lecture period is where we're going to do the problem solving, and the homework is where they just basically get the content delivery in terms of videos. Here's the procedure I'm using for my course. So today's talk is more of a case study. Okay, it's basic. The course meets twice a week for 90 minutes. It was originally Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but I like the larger chunk of time, and I think that works better for a flipped classroom. Students watch the videos before coming to class. Okay. The class starts with a quiz on the videos to make sure they watch those videos, okay? The quiz is auto-graded in Blackboard, and I only show the questions in class. So if you don't come to class, you know, you're not going to be able to take the quiz. And furthermore, it's nice, too, because there's not an archived set of quiz questions. If you give students paper quizzes, then you have to make up new quizzes each year, and that gets difficult. So this solves that as well. We review the quiz. We review any questions they have on the lecture, which there's always a couple. And then maybe about 5 to 10 minutes in the class, we spend the next 80 minutes working on homework problems in groups of 3. Okay? So that's the procedure. And here's what they're given. They're given basically a Word document on Blackboard, which they download, that's got basically problems they run through. And here's a little bit about how we do what kind of problems we do. So I don't use many textbook problems. In the STEM education, a lot of those are just plug and chug. And so I use problems typically for flipped and in general which do the following. One, they immediately reteach key points from the videos. It is amazing in a flipped classroom to see how I take what I considered a perfected lecture, put it in an online format, they come in, they say, oh yeah, we understood it, and then you ask them to basically draw it out themselves, diagram it, articulate it, solve it themselves, and they are completely incapable of doing it at first. And they have to think about it. And it shows you the stark difference between passive learning, just listening, and active learning where you actually have to kind of think through it yourself. They think they understand it when they see it, but when they actually go to implement it the first time, they're like, wait a second, I really didn't understand this. And so it's just, the flipped classroom really brings that into stark relief. And I begin problems which they're just basically going over the basics of the lecture again. I don't assume that they know those things, which is often the truth. The more advanced problems require two comprehension. Those come later. They require group discussion, so they're really starting to interact as groups at that point. And the problems always focus on key pitfalls that students encounter. So I've taught this course long enough where I'm like, half the students really struggle on this, and then I can see them real time crash, right, on particular problems, and then inject myself and call everybody over, and then pull them through. Whereas in a traditional lecture format, they would be at home on a weekend doing homework, and they'd just be crashing and burning, and I wouldn't be able to help them, right? So I can see that happen in real time. Whatever they don't finish in class, they're responsible for on their own. Homeworks are submitted online, and they're just graded for completion. I don't have to grade homeworks because I'm watching them do the homework, right? So this is a little bit less work for me as well. Here's the files they have. There's the problem sheet. Here's the lecture in PDF and PowerPoint. The videos are provided both in download and streaming format as well. How do I record my videos? There's a lot of software out there. I used some of the desktop versions in the beginning. I really didn't like them, and then I started using the least expensive one, which I think is the best. Explain everything. You could basically upload your PowerPoint slides or whatever you want to do, and you have a laser pointer you could see there. You could draw on it real time. It's not showing up real well here. The reason why I like this is I'm holding a tablet, I'm sitting in a chair, I'm relaxed, okay? And I'm kind of drawing and talking like I would if I were teaching you here. A lot of the other more complicated desktop software, you hold your mouse, you got your hand on your keyboard, and I, at least, automatically go into computer mode. I'm less personable, I'm less interactive. So having a tablet there where I'm kind of drawing on a surface, just for me as an educator, brings me closer to a whiteboard or chalkboard, and it really does make a big difference for me. May not be the same for everyone, and that's also only $3, and it works, okay? So it's simple. Videos, typically, a golden rule of flipped classroom or online videos, 5 to 15 minutes, right? If you go beyond that, you're back in Charlie Brown territory, even if it's a really interactive video itself, okay? And I haven't done, I'm getting better at this myself. It's hard to get there, okay? So some of my videos are still too long, but I'm trying to get there. And at the end, there's a short review quiz questions at the end of each video segment. So they say, okay, did you understand what's in the video? Here's some review questions. If you can answer all these, go on to the next one. If not, you really need to go back because it'll show up on the quiz the next day. And I use my old slides, but they only had to be slightly modified. Okay, so that's the online videos. What about the classroom? Okay, so when you see first offered me a flipped classroom, it was a lot like what you see here. Loth just basically put out this competition for basically asking for design and furniture for advanced classrooms. And this was the type we had at UC at the time, and I was a little frustrated because they're all sitting positions, okay? Even if they have chairs that could scoot around, you're sitting. And I don't want sitting. It basically makes you less alert. It's a chance to start getting sleepy like you are right now, right? And you're much less likely to move around and interact with other groups. If I'm already standing, I'm going to go across the room. If I'm sitting and comfortable, I'm not going to start interacting probably as much. Furthermore, when you're on your feet, you're more alert. So we recently, just this year, we made a new classroom specifically for this in 840 Old Chem, the old math library, where you're on your feet the whole time. Okay, you see you have sort of bar height tables and stools, and the students are on their feet the whole time. I haven't had a single complaint about this. We also have a disability access table for people if they need to sit. Okay, so this is the type of classroom that I was envisioning for this, that really bring on 8 a.m., right? Because if you're that tired, you're going to fall to the ground, that'll wake you up, basically, right? So this will hold up to 33. This classroom will hold up to 33, and it is available now. It's not super pretty yet. We're going to redo the carpet and the walls, but it's functional. And so we said, let's get it functional before we invest further. And so it seems to be working. Here's some example mid-semester feedback. I'll go through it quickly. I learn best with frequent small assignments. So we do homework, and they get feedback on homework every class period, right? So it's in smaller volumes. I come to class feeling confident I'll be able to do the homework and ace the quiz. I can pause the lecture, so this is the value of video lectures, write down notes. Doing the homework in class is great too because it reinforces what I learned and because you're able to walk around and explain concepts that might have been fuzzy to me in the lecture. As a result, I walk out of class feeling like I really know the material. By doing in-class questions, I can test how well I study from your lectures. When we meet a problem, I'm able to ask you immediately, right? Saves me a lot of time. They love that, as opposed to spending 3 hours like, what is the problem? I can't solve this problem on the weekend, right? Here's some end of semester feedback. That was mid-semester feedback. I truly think that all professors should take notes on this because they can see how much we're learning and overall attitude on a tough subject such as this. It's one of the hardest subjects they take. They think this is how engineering should be taught. This is important. The organization of the class was superb. For a flipped classroom, you have to be organized. If it's not organized, it will go poorly. So you really have to strategize out, and the students noticed that as well. It was a welcome change. I got more of this format than what a lecture. Probably my favorite class, right? We get that quite frequently. Now, there's a caveat. I have this feedback, but what you really need to do is a multi-section sort of blind review of this, right? And when you mix up students and look at GPAs and things like that. But at this point, I have no doubt in my mind that this is superior for classes with conceptually difficult material. It's a really good sweet spot for that. Here's some less obvious advantages and some of the things that I love about the format the most. Procrastination in human nature for the first time is working in my favor. In a traditional format, you have homework due every week or 2 weeks, you lecture, and the students wait until the last minute to do the homework, and by then they've forgotten everything you taught them, right? So they're really not learning, and you're just scrambling. In this case, they do the exact same thing, meaning that they watch the videos right before class. And then they do the homework immediately, right? It's the first time I've seen student nature actually working in my favor. So that is a big plus. It's very difficult for students to fall behind. I mean, it's a little bit like helicopter teaching, but my job is to help students hit student outcomes. And if I'm doing that better, then I don't have a problem with that. I think it's like just-in-time teaching on steroids. I can see them struggle. I can teach them what they're missing. I change the problems real time all the time in class. I'll see a group not getting something or the wording's not right, and I tell the students, I just rewrote the problem and uploaded it right then and there. You can't do that in traditional format, right? So again, I think it's the ultimate implementation of JIT. I love the soft skills development. Students can write down answers, and you ask them to articulate it, and they completely fail, right? They just like, I don't know how to say this, right? And that's what they're going to have to do in the real world. And in engineering, we have particular challenges with our students doing a lot of this. So it's really helpful in that perspective. I love the fact that it forces learners into study groups. One of the classic things when a student is coming to my class, and I'm like, why are you not doing, why are we struggling? There's two reasons. Either I got a job because I bought a new car. I'm like, well, you live poor, you're in college, right? Or they're like, I'm studying alone, and they're trying to do it on their own. And that's a big one too. Well, in this case, they're forced into mini study groups and they're interacting more. And if you think about culture, gender barriers, I think for STEM, this could be one of the biggest leap forwards we make for our minority students, because I see it all the time. They tend to basically not integrate as well with all the students in formed study groups, and that hurts them, right? And so this more proactively pulls them into groups with folks that they might not socialize with, but in the classroom, they're in there studying with them. Some disadvantages and pitfalls. It takes a lot of work to get it set up correctly, okay? But I think it's worth it in the end. It may not be ideal for all types of courses. It probably certainly is not. It is different for different levels. First-year students come in, they're not highly capable of a fully flipped format. So you're going to have a hybrid where you do a problem, you bring them all together, you kind of step them through it, right? They need to be led through a little bit. How to offer it from greater than 30 students, I think really I would just do multiple sections. I haven't hit that yet. You could potentially do a TA and run 2 rooms. I'm thinking about video solutions. I'm excited about that because video solutions basically take written homework solutions and make them as good as an in-class exercise, right, which is kind of interesting. A key thing to remember is that they're teaching each other too. Once they get good at this, I don't have to teach as much. I'm just a facilitator. If I'm busy, sometimes I'll send a struggling group. I'm like, go talk to them. And they go over there, and then you've got 6 of them teaching each other. And that's my favorite part, is for me to just be quiet and watch them teach each other. And we're like, what about the people that are trying to get their homework done? When they're teaching someone else, they're learning all sorts of skills, and they're actually cementing their knowledge as well at the same time. It is no replacement for repetition of key calculations. So repetition, 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 this doesn't replace that. So you still may need to have that outside the class. I've got one brief note that has nothing to do with flipped classroom on tests, but this is a policy I believe strongly in STEM classrooms if you can do it. For this, I do it for this course as well. Before each test, I give them access to the last 3 to 5 years of test solutions. I've done this for several years. And the nice thing is the students do all these test problems. Unknowingly, they've been tricked into doing more homework. They're like, wow, this is the real problems. We better do these. And I'm like, well, that's okay. Yeah, it's real problems. It's the same as the homework and everything else we do, but they do it so much more seriously, right? And so it's a way to get them to study more. And then when I come to my test in a class like this, they can bring a sheet with all their equations. It's really a focus on deep comprehension, not memorization, because they'll always be able to look up that stuff. My analogy is if you're on the job, and you're making some big deliverable for your boss, you're not going to be like, well, I just did this all off memorization. Your boss will be horrified. Well, did you not check the calculations and look up to make sure it was the right equations? And so I think that's more in line with the real world, too. This is the biggest thing, is this levels the playing field. There's network students that have the tests, and a level of fairness is incredibly important, I believe, in the classroom. So this way, everybody's got the test. So that's been leveled as well. And, of course, grading and posting the solutions for the test the same day is key to learning, because if you do it a week later, they're like, I don't care. I don't remember anything about it. So if you do it the same day, it's amazing. I'll get emails back from students like, I don't quite understand where I got this question wrong. So that's important, I think, as well. So let's say you don't want to flip. It may not fit your classroom, but, how can you but you should make your class more active. If you look at some of the studies, like this National Academy of Sciences article, going from passive to active scores on average are 6% higher. And if you don't, your failure rate's about 1.5 times higher. So this is just another form of active learning, right? I just flipped a hybrid lab lecture course. It's an optics for engineer course. We have 1 credit hour of lecture and 2 credit hours of lab. We only meet once a week for a 4-question quiz. Okay, so that's the part to make sure they're watching the lectures. They go to the labs, they do a lab report, and I love it because it's the ultimate reinforcement I've been able to achieve. So the first thing they do for a particular subject for each week is they watch the lecture. Then they come in and they study for a quiz. That's 2, right? Then they apply it in the lab. That's 3. Then they write up their lab report and do calculations. That's 4. And my quiz questions for the next week also go back to the previous lab. So they get 5x reinforcement. It's really cool. And that was enabled by doing a partially flipped format for this lab. And so there's some benefits there as well. Last item, and this is the secret. Once the course is up and running, it is likely less work for the faculty member. I have found it to be so. I'm assessing way more. I'm giving quizzes every day that are automatically graded. I'm watching them do the homework. My assessment is up, at least 3x to an order of magnitude with less work. And after 3 semesters, I have not had a single student come to office hours. And I used to always have students come to office hours, and that's because they're getting tutored in the classroom. Okay? So it is a lot of upfront work, but once you do it, if you do it well, I think it could be less work. So the way I feel about this now is I used to have these perfect lectures, but I realized I used to talk. And you feel like you're bringing yourself down from that great orator type thing, right, that we all love to rise up to. But now I look back at it, I'm like, now I'm teaching. And even if I'm just facilitating, like, you go talk to them, and I'm not teaching, I think that's a higher level of teaching than what I was doing before. Okay? So that's all I have. I want to thank you for listening, and we can spend the rest of the time with some questions. Sure.
When you have your students come in and take a quiz first thing, does your classroom have computers in it, or do they bring their device, or how does that work?
That's a great question. So they all have laptops or smartphones. And I forgot to mention this. When they do the homework, by the way, they do them on those whiteboards. And how they basically write that, we don't have electronic smartboards or anything like that. They just take a picture with their smartphone and they just load the pictures into Word. So that's how they archive their stuff. And they'll either use their laptop or their smartphone to take the quiz on Blackboard. And so we've gotten to a point now where it's interesting. In the old days, you would have needed smart boards and stuff like that. But their smartphones that they all have cameras, and everyone's equipped. So I haven't run into any issues with them not having accessibilities to the online quizzes or being able to capture their content.
Does your course have a textbook? And if not, how would you adapt with a course that uses an encyclopedic large textbook?
So the textbook, so here's one of the pitfalls of this. I actually should have put in here. One of the challenges we have is students are reading less and less. And to a certain degree, we kind of push back on that, but this format actually makes it a little bit worse because they're learning through the lectures, and the lectures in the class are good enough that some of them rarely go to the textbook. The entire course is mapped directly against the textbook. So the lectures say equation 6.3b from page whatever. So that's all linked in there. But the textbook is there as a reference. And I'm kind of torn on this personally. I'm like, they need to read more. It's a skill that they're not doing as much, but they're learning more deeply and more comprehensively. So so I haven't figured that one out. So that is a potential pitfall.
How do you know they're watching the videos? Did you ask them, are they winging your quizzes or they're...
Yeah, so the quizzes, one, you watch the quiz grades, and in my optics class, I basically have a min grade on the quizzes. It's like I don't care how you do on the labs and all the other grades, you have to get a minimum grade on the quizzes. And if they start to go down, I send a warning shot that, 4 of you are in danger of failing because your quiz grades are dropping. So they will watch the lectures. So sometimes you have to basically, put a min value on the quizzes saying it doesn't matter what you do in here, you got to come prepared. The other, I can tell too. I had it last semester, I had a student, and I could just see in his group he was just struggling, and I said, you're not watching the quizzes. He's like, I just don't like this format. I like the traditional format, and I haven't been watching them. And then I'm like, well, you got to do it, man. You got to do it. And that student, by the end of the quarter, was funny, by the end of the semester, came back and said, I totally get it. This is the best way I've ever had to learn. I wish more people taught like this. But you have some that just resist to start because they're like, I want you to basically stand up there for 60 minutes and feed it to me, spoon feed it to me, right? But you can tell, too, as you're going around the classroom and you're watching them, you can kind of tell, too, in addition to the quiz grades. Yes?
So if you only grade the homework, right, and the exercises for completion, do you find that if a student doesn't finish their work in class, then they'll sort of cynically submit the minimum to get the completion grade, or do they go on and really work to complete?
We finish 90%. Most of the time they finish in class. Okay. So I've actually increased the length of the homeworks compared to what they were. So most of the time they finish in class. So I'm not too concerned about it. There's certain levels, like are you watching all the videos? Are you finishing the homework really well? As an educator, I'm like, there's a limit to what I can do with the hours I have in my day. And so I feel like now I've taken it to a level where I'm like, if you choose not to do those last 2 problems, then, but they most of the time they do finish. And just a couple times a semester they won't finish on time.
Can you tell us what the app is that you use?
Explain everything. Explain everything. Yeah, you just search for Explain Everything, and it's simple. It has less options, so which is nice. Sometimes they have too many options. Yes.
So how many of those 5 to 2-minute video sections do you typically have them watch before?
It's typically somewhere between 50 or 40 to 70 minutes. So it might be anywhere from, it could range from 2 to 4. Even some it's as high as 5 if I'm able to break it up into small ones. So. Yeah, they'll watch it. They say they'll love it because I'll watch it. Then they're like, I'll go take a break. I'm fried, and then I'll come back refreshed and go to the next one.
Do you find that your students using other video resources, such as through Khan Academy, MOOCs, or YouTube?
No, not yet. Not yet. I spent a lot of time on the lectures, that's the fear, is that the lectures and the format are good enough to the point where they're not going and accessing the book either. But I had a slide here I showed originally about online learning, and people see it as potential threat. And I'm like, no, it's going to be great. It's going to be a great democratizer because right now you only got a couple textbooks, but like anyone could make videos and put them on the web. And so I imagine there will be a day where I'm like, well, these were really good videos, but so-and-so at University Y has really just mastered this, and I'm going to use their videos, right? And so that day will come as well at some point. Any more questions? One more, George. I think we got to be done after that one. Yeah.
I was wondering if you stimulate the use of references in this format.
Stimulate the use of references. Oh, so they go out and look at external material and pull it in.
External materials more than what just you.
We do that in some ways, but not in terms of a traditional referencing format. So, yeah. I think we have to stop there because you have to get on to the next sessions. Thanks for your time. Great questions.